So, welcome back everyone after lunch. I hope those of you who were here for the launch of our strategy in the morning have had time to digest philosophically what was said and start thinking about the sorts of actions that you can take in order to strengthen your advocacy, in order to strengthen your contribution to the global library field. Now, one of the really important things, one of the first of the 4 pillars of the strategy is very much focused on how can we strengthen the global voice of libraries. This is because libraries don't just depend on the environment around us. Clearly there is a level of dependency for funding, for support, for laws, but they can also shape it. Indeed, we have a duty to our users to keep up the pressure, to keep on underlining what it is that makes libraries so special, why it's so important for governments to invest in libraries, in order to allow them to benefit from the services from now on into the future. So we need librarians to be out there, to raise awareness, to build support, and to catalyse action in favour of libraries. Now, advocacy involves working with lots of different actors. You can advocate to your friends, you can advocate at the pub, you can also advocate to journalists, to influencers, to bloggers, to funders. But of course, in so many cases, the people that you really need to talk to and the people you really need to convince in order to make those crucial decisions are politicians. And this is true at the local level, where there may be funding decisions about a public library, to the national level, where there are discussions about the way open access policies, to the global level, where, for example, there are discussions about the Sustainable Development Goals or cross-border copyright law. Therefore, we're really lucky to have with us 2 people with long political experience to talk to us now. This is a great opportunity to understand how libraries fit into their priorities, how they see libraries helping them to deliver, and also to understand how their colleagues see libraries, how we in the library field can be more effective, more impactful in building understanding, in building support, and in building action in favour of libraries. There's one thing that's come out of research in recent years has been that people like libraries. They're sympathetic, they think they're nice, but they're not necessarily ready to stand up. If they're given a choice between the library and something else, there's a risk that they'll go for that something else. Therefore, we need to be active in fighting our corner, in underlining why an investment in libraries, as our President Gloria Perez-Salmon likes to say, it's an investment, not a cost. So therefore, I would first of all like to invite to the stage Catherine Stihler. She is Executive Director currently, CEO at Open Knowledge International, but she is a 4-term member of the European Parliament, serving from 1999 until January of this year. So Catherine, welcome. And I would secondly like to invite Mr. Rabih Azad-Ahmad, who is the Alderman for Culture at the city of Aarhus in Denmark. Now, Mr. Ahmad has been on the council in Aarhus since 2014, if I remember correctly, and has been following the work of libraries throughout this time. As we all know, Aarhus is a great library city, given that it won the Public Library Award of the Year last year. So, a great example of a library at work, but we look forward to hearing your views. So thank you. So just to explain, we're going to do this as an informal conversation, but the objective is that at the end we have a little bit of time. So at the end I will show a slide, so you can go online and you can type in your questions. There will be a roving mic moving around the room, and there are a couple of stationary microphones. So feel free to ask your own questions as well. Don't just rely on my ones. So to start with Catherine. Could you share some background about why you got into politics and your career so far?
Okay, I think this is on. Is it? Can you all hear me? Yeah, that's great. I got involved in politics because I wanted to change the world. I wanted to make a difference, and when I was a student, I just got involved in student politics. And represented my student body as president of the Students' Association, stood as the youngest candidate in the 97 general election, and then in 1999 I was fortunate to be selected on the Labour Party's list in Scotland, and I was the last person elected but happened to be the youngest MEP elected at the age of 25 for the United Kingdom. And I had a 20-year career in the European Parliament before I went on to become the CEO of Open Knowledge and what was Open Knowledge International, which is now actually Open Knowledge Foundation, so sorry, we changed the name back. But what's been great about that is that my journey to becoming CEO was really about my work on copyright reform. In 2014, I was given the responsibility to work in the Internal Market Committee. I was vice chair of that committee to look at, it was particularly the thing which is now called Article 17 for those of you who are interested, but which was Article 13. And we got a sensible position in my committee and we drove that through, but sadly we could not get that through the rest of the Parliament. And it just was one of these things where when you start to look at openness, and that's why what I'm doing now, fighting for a fair, free and open future, seems so important. When so many things to me are being closed, we really have to fight for things being open, and that's where I think libraries play a really wonderful role in being a partner in that fight. So that's maybe, it gives you a small background to my involvement.
Thank you. Rabih?
At first, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some thought with you. Actually, I think it's very important also to see which role sometimes the library has playing in our life. My background is that today I'm Alderman and I'm responsible for cultural and citizen service in our city, and also the responsible for the libraries. And I'm also educated as lawyer. But once in my life, I was actually born in a refugee camp, and came to Denmark and to Aarhus as the second city in Denmark in 1989. And once in my life, everything was actually not going. It was almost in a time I was. Actually without hope, without future, living in a social challenged area. And I believe that the library in Gellerup is actually our local library was one of the first maybe in the world working with being transformed as community center. And it has played a very big role for people with people who are at social challenge, and has been also a good model for how to work with libraries. I think that's one of the things that is very important, is to see how library also influence people's life. It has played an important role in my life. And that's why actually I think today the library's role is getting more and more important, more than actually also when I was younger. And that's why I think we have to see how we can get stronger dialogue. The theme is also about between the librarian, the IFLA, and more the politicians and the decision makers.
Thank you. That's really encouraging. It's certainly something we look to do, and as we go on, we'll discuss how is the most effective way of doing this. I'd be interested to dig a little further into libraries contributing to your own objectives in politics. So you talked about openness. What does that actually look like? And you talked about integration, about really allowing people to realise their potential.
Well, maybe I tell you the story about in 2012, I got involved and ran a campaign. This is quite funny, but it was called Open Knowledge. Little did I know, so many years later, I've been running an organisation with Open Knowledge in its title. But it was to do with e-book access in public libraries. And if I just tell you the story that I started looking, I thought, why in some areas our people can get access to e-books, and in other areas they don't? And I'll give you the example in Scotland. There's one local authority that the most amazing ebook access that you could ever imagine. I thought, how can they do this? And it turned out the guy that was the head librarian was an IT specialist, and he was just on it. And this was one of the poorest areas that you could possibly kind of imagine. And then I went to part of, it was in Glasgow, to a library, again in a really poor area, and they just didn't have any access. And I thought, how can he do this? And this other local authority, and then it got me kind of like, we have to try and do something, because it wasn't just about allowing people to have ebook access. It was also a campaign I've been involved with, which was for around the Marrakesh Treaty, and about visually impaired people, and giving access to formats that people could access literature through. So it all just combined, and so we ran a campaign and we put it on the agenda. We made sure people were more aware of it, and we put political pressure both at a European level but also at a local level. And it led to some changes, maybe not all the changes I would like to see, but it certainly put it on the agenda, and it wouldn't have been on the agenda if we hadn't run that campaign. So I'll just give you that as just one small example, but it also fitted into the work we were doing around digital literacy, digital access, accessibility at a European level, which we were involved with at the time. So all kind of, as they say, all politics is local. And if you can't bring that to a local level, then sometimes, shall we say, that politicians, kind of are not as relatable, or, and the other thing I think about libraries, that they're just one of the most precious public spaces that we have left. And I think that's another aspect of why it's so important that those public spaces that we have, that people can come into, regardless of background, regardless of anything, can come to that space, is so important across our world today. And I think that that makes the case for libraries, and why we should be campaigning for libraries even more so important.
Rabih?
Actually, there is many things I couldn't share with you, but I just want to, because of the time, just to choose maybe 2 or 3 things. I think the way libraries are playing as a community center, and has been a model for how to empower people, how to let people come inside, and actually being as equal people, a neutral place where everyone is actually equal, is meeting each other's, and that's I think that's very important, special for people who actually need that kind of space. For instance, people who are loneless, people who are social challenged. One of the things I got from IFLA actually, and I will thank you for that. Last year I was participating in IFLA, and it's actually my 5th time, maybe 5th or 6th times. We were talking about the SDG, the Sustainability Development Goals for the United Nations, and I think that was very inspiring. So I get back to Aarhus, to my city, and I said that I made a proposal to the municipality and said we want to work with the 17 goals. And that was adapted. And today, every policy we make has to look at the DSG 17 goals. Actually, that's something was inspired by IFLA. And one thing also is that we here this summer just opened our first actually center for SDG. It's a special section in the main library where we have partnership with the business sections, we have partnership with the municipalities, and the meaning of it is actually to have a good dialogue also with the young about what SDG is about. And what is most important is actually that SDG is not something we are talking about in the United Nations, but it's becoming an everyday goals we are working with. And that's what we are doing in Aarhus, and I'm very happy for that. And the second one, if I just want to add one thing more, is that I was participating in IFLA, where we were talking about reading skills and the importance of helping children very early to get the reading skills. And I came back to Aarhus and was inspired also actually from IFLA, and made a proposal that we are going to work with reading skills as a strategy in our city. And that was adopted, and we are working with it actually right now. And the most maybe interesting thing is actually that the whole country in Denmark right now, they are discussing reading strategy. The Minister of Education has been discussing that after, and other cities are actually working with adopting the same strategy as we are working with. So I think that was two other things, and I think I give you the time to to not to make it longer.
Thank you, and it's really good to hear that talking about the SDGs here makes a difference. If ever Aarhus decides to do a local review, Helsinki has done so recently, please make sure the library's on the front cover like it was in Helsinki. Following on, actually, you both touched on the idea of libraries and civic space. What do you see the role of libraries in democracy as being today?
I think, democracy, the foundation of democracy is actually public information. It's also a space where people meet. One of the challenges which actually make me as a father for children be worried is actually what's happening in the social media with fake news. I like social media and I use it also. But there is a lot of fake news, a lot of challenges, and children who's actually not behaving good. We are talking about digital literacy also as well. And I think that library is one of the most important place for public information and the meeting space for the people. So the information we are getting is not only through the social media. And I think that we have also to be maybe more awareness about the challenges we have in the society and what library is going. It's actually, for me, it's not library. It's the functions and the role of the library that I'm interested in. Actually, it could be a building. It could be also vital. But for me, is the function. The role of the library is to, for instance, to get into newer targeted groups as young children, young people. Children, and something else, who is working with the loneless people who are social challenged. I think the role of the library is getting actually much bigger today than it's ever had been, because it's not about borrowing books, but it's about a space where people can develop, where you can make the partnership with between the civic and the local people and the business sectors and the politicians, and that's actually what we are doing now today. For us, is a library not a space where the librarian who is making all these things. Actually, it's a partnership between the public and people and the business sector.
I think that when we think about democracy just now, that's a very big question about where things are going. And I thought when you mentioned the questions, I mean, it was 3 words that came about what libraries do. It gives quality information, which is about being trusted. It's about the credibility, because librarians are some of the most credible and trusted people that individuals will go to. And it's about the reliability of that space being there. So I kept thinking about the quality, the credibility and reliability. But we think about how this space can be used in different ways. And I'll just give you maybe one interesting example that I discovered last week when I was talking to, it was a guy who is involved in sensors, who's got one of the most amazing databases in terms of knowing where radiation is. And he was involved in the Fukushima disaster, actually giving better information to citizens than the Japanese government was providing, which is really interesting. And what they're doing, they're taking the same technology and about to apply it across the LA public library system to look at air quality. A friend of mine, I'm on the Public Libraries 2030 campaign advisory board, and they're looking at that as well in Brussels, using libraries not just about collecting the data from the sensors, but also having an education piece around that, which allows people to become more data literate, but also this is about holding people in power to account. And I can't think at the moment of, I can think of other areas, but air quality is one of the key areas where we can do something. But there's a whole bunch of public data out there that people can't access because maybe they don't have the skills to access it, or they don't have, and then it makes me think that maybe libraries really are going to be, in 10, 20 years' time, the key community data hubs, so that citizens not only generate data that they can use to hold government to account, but also can use the data that's there to make better choices and better decisions that are happening in their local communities. So there's so much opportunity. And also, when we're thinking about democracy, the challenges we face as a society about the choices we're going to have to make. I know a lot of you have watched that programme, The Great Hack, and have watched Carol Cadwaller's TED Talk about what happened in my country on the Brexit referendum, and I just didn't want to mention Brexit at all when I'm with an audience. But there is something there that we have to make better decisions and make things more clearer and more open about how decisions are made in the world that we're existing within today.
So I think it's an extremely powerful point, and the idea that there's information and there's the ability to use information, and you really need both. Again, from the UK, about 10 years ago, there was a lot of effort on open government data, and the assumption was that a band of what we called armchair auditors, so people would just sit in their rooms and look at government data and find things, and actually you need to help. You can't just assume that people will find it, so, and libraries are playing that role. Now probably to come to the sort of slightly harder questions, maybe not for you, but for us. During your political work, during your work on Aarhus City Council, during your work in the European Parliament, what do you think your colleagues thought about libraries, if at all?
Well, we formed this, I instigated, I think it was 2014, and chaired the all-party library group. We called it the Library Lovers Group, and when I asked some colleague to join it, she didn't hear the word library, she only heard lovers, and so it led to quite an interesting conversation. But she expressed her interest in libraries, and we got a great group of people, and I'm really proud of the fact that it's still existing, it's really strong, and in October, I think the 8th, we again will have the Generation Code event that we've been happening in the European Parliament, and I hope to go along in my new role as the CEO of the Open Knowledge Foundation. What you find is that people have personal stories about libraries, have a connection with libraries. There's a feeling, and I think we have to do more about that in terms of getting people's personal stories and storytelling around it to be able to get that buy-in. And I think there really is. What struck me, and that's why we started this in 2014, was libraries just were not having a strong enough voice in the copyright debate. And I think because we increased that debate on some things, I know Article 13, now Article 17, we lost. But in other things we got through. And so I think that if we hadn't had that space and ability, the influence wouldn't have been there. So there's something positive about having that connection. And I'm sure at a local level, there's ways that local authorities work very closely together. I know they do that in Scotland, I know that they do that in the UK, and I know they do that in other places. But the fact that you're here at this week to have all of this knowledge and ability and sharing ideas across the world is the fact that you have this world network that is just so incredibly powerful. And I just think that the more that we can use that, the more that we can work together to be able to put forward why libraries are so vital to today, even more so than when the first libraries were created 500 or 100,000, well, thousand years ago, but also in the more modern settings of when librarians, started and had, it's just this thing that the trusted species that we have and that you're part of is so exciting.
Actually, I believe that we have a very big support for the municipality and people in Aarhus are supporting the libraries. You just mentioned Doc 1, which is actually one thing we are very proud of, not only because of the award, but also because it's became a place for really many people. Just look at the visitors. Actually, many times our inhabitants. Dock 1 was the biggest building investment in the history in Aarhus. It tells how Aarhus and my city is looking at the library and the importance role that the library is working. And that was actually a very important and good decisions that we are very happy for today. I would like to share maybe a story some years ago where we were working with a budget in our municipality, and we decided to close a local library. And I can tell you, that's actually one of the decisions that the municipality regret. I can tell you it gives really big problems for the politicians. The entire society, and especially in the local area, they were at the street demonstrating because I think many local politicians, they didn't know the importance of that local library and the local libraries, which role it's playing as a place which is making people coming together, united people, a place where people using it, the place where it's natural to come. We understood that was a very wrong decision, and the decision has been redone. And that's not only not because the politician wanted, that's because the people want something else, and since that, I think politicians are much more aware about the role of the library today. And I have one of my colleagues here. I could maybe ask him if he ever will come with a proposal that could close a local library or library. No, I'm not doing that, but I'm saying that shows actually the importance of the library, and I think the library is having a very big support, but I still need something more to do. And I think IFLA, and maybe that's some of the things that I'm happy to hear today when I'm hearing the strategy for the years coming, is actually that the library are playing much bigger role in education, learning, in empowering people, the young people, but we still need to be more visible about what's actually happening. Not only here in IFLA, but we need also the ambassadors who actually go, and not only the ambassadors who are here, but also special many young people involving in advocating for the rule and why which importance the library is playing in our future society.
Just to follow up, Rabih, Aarhus is clearly an excellent example, and the fact that the City Council would decide to make its biggest ever real estate investment, its biggest ever construction project, and do that in a library. What makes Aarhus special? Why Aarhus? Why not Esbjerg?
Aarhus is actually, as it's mentioned, the second biggest city in Denmark. We have a lot of young people, and it's an education city. So people, they are actually focusing also on how to educate. And Aarhus is, if you mention Aarhus in Denmark, they will see culture. And people, they know that education and culture is actually very have a strong point, and that's why I think that people in Aarhus understand that a cultural institution as Dock 1 is very, very important if you want to reach out to many of the challenges we have in the society, and to also to give that necessary education and getting the children from very early.
Thank you. Did you want to add?
I don't think I've got anything to add.
That's fine. I wasn't expecting you to be an expert on Aarhus. We have the expert here. It was also interesting you're saying that it was clearly when the library was closing that people came to the streets, and you're British, I'm British. Sadly, we see a lot of the same with that it's only when probably the worst has happened that people come out. One concern that I've heard a few times in my work is that a lot of people who get into Parliament, who get onto councils, they were in university, so they used a university library. Maybe they used a public library as a child. They haven't been back very often. And so they assume that libraries are as they were in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. How can we get beyond that? How can we better show, and this is we, us audience and me here, better show those in power who may not have the time to go frequently to libraries what's actually happening now?
Maybe I can use an example. Some months ago, we invited the young council in Aarhus to talk about the digitalization and the libraries. And we asked them, do you use the library? And they said, no. Then we asked them, do you use Dokken, also our main library? Then they said, yes, every day, almost. Then I think somehow that the young people still think that library is actually only a place where the books, in our main library there is a lot of books, but it's also a place where you can almost do everything together with other people. And I think that's something that has to be changed, that the libraries has been transformed from being a place where you can loan books to a place which is a democracy place, a meeting space for every age. And that is very important. And what we also could do, and that's actually what I asked before, is to get more young people in the governance we have here, in the also the work we are working, also because we need also to have more younger generation also as librarian, because I think the librarians who are working today, they are doing excellence. But I think because if we want to reach out to other target groups, we need them also to be represented in what we are doing.
Because I think if each and every one of you in this room invited your local politician or some MEP or whoever it is, I mean, it's just an invitation to come and see what you're doing and to look at what's happening. I mean, the local library, when I did my presentation yesterday, my local library is the very first Carnegie Library, and so we're very proud of that library. But the library has just had a big revamp, so it's now got a cafe, it's got better spaces, it's got an actual dedicated research kind of space now with the books that are really some things that were never put really on proper display, but are there in a way which is just quite for those who want to be inspired in a different way. But the space is full of people who are studying and students, so there's a quiet space, but there's active spaces, and it's also got a little maze outside for kids that you open the big door in the children's library and people go out, and it's just this different space. And it's kind of, from what I can see, my perception, I go to the library, I've got 2 children, one's 13, one's 7, and we try when we can, and they have events. They have the one that I took my son to was about the witches of West Fife, which he was doing witches at school, so we went along to this, and it was packed. People were standing at the door to get spare tickets. And okay, maybe it was near Halloween, I don't know, but it was just this thing of an open, accessible space that people need to see. When I wrote, I was speaking at an event to do with libraries, and I put an open editorial out, and one of my board members said, well, libraries are in the past, Catherine. And I challenged and said, have you been to your local library recently? Have you seen some of the amazing things that are going on? Because much as people have and understand the the idea of library. Some of it is stuck in the past and we have to transit. But that's the great thing, is that the stories that are out there that you can tell about the things that are going on are ones that we just have to get. And maybe it is about just doing a little bit better PR about the things that are happening and inviting people into the space who maybe have, and yes, politicians are busy, and it's true you've invited a few people today who can't make it and different things, but at the end of the day, if you don't go out there and engage, you can't expect people to understand and learn your story, and engagement is so important. So sometimes it's hard, but taking that deep breath and going to ask is just a letter, email, WhatsApp message away for those of you who want to engage in that way.
Rabih?
And I think there is also something which is very important also to work with is to look at the physical spaces because it has to be more invited for all the target groups, especially the young people. They would like to come up a space where they can see it's openly, there is no it's good to see the books because it's part of it, but it's also good to have a space where it's more young invited also.
Thank you. I have a few more questions, but I wanted to open to the floor as well in case there are questions that you have. I would also ask if our technical team could put the slide back up, because we are being live streamed. I think the technical team will see this in a minute. We are being live streamed, and so for people who are watching us from not here, it's possible to go to a website, type in a code and type in your question, and then it should magically turn up on this iPad in front of me. So we'll wait for the technical team to actually put that up. Are there any questions in the audience? Right at the back. Could I ask you to come down to the physical mic? I'm sorry. We do a lot of walking on this stage, so sometimes you have to too. Thank you. It's appreciated.
Hello. My name is Woody, and I work as a public librarian in Sweden. And the question I have, I hear what you're saying about libraries being important community centers, playing transformative roles, especially within multicultural communities where people don't feel represented within the greater context of the country they're living in if they're immigrants, for example. But as a librarian who works with other librarians, having gone through a process of education where I've been taught, and we have been taught a certain set of skills to perform our duty as librarians, we often find that we are not properly equipped, we don't have the resources to be able to perform this community role. So in a way, we become these community centers because we are the place where people can access information, be guided about how to find their way around the context they're in. But we haven't been trained to do it, and we don't have the resources, so we feel quite thinly spread and frustrated. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around that particular question, either of you. Thank you.
I mean, it's clearly that so many librarians do feel thinly spread, and I think you're right that it is about kind of how do we provide better ways of sharing information. But I think maybe that's a way that can be, I mean, if it's about having the training, that can be solved. The resources are issues which are ongoing. I mean, I know that all local authorities that I know are under huge budgetary constraints, and just saving libraries, there's things that were in our minds very much. But I think what you're describing about the support, information, exchanging how to do things, is finding vehicles that are cost-effective, are communicative, cross boundaries, are things that maybe IFLA can take on board. And also just, I guess, if you're concerned about contacting politicians, you know, that don't be. And I think choosing who to connect with, I mean, it might be that you have a number of people because it's a PR system you're in. If it's a first past the post system, you've got one person to contact. Often their offices are super helpful because they want you to engage and they want to know what's happening and want that connection. But I do think the training element is something that can be addressed and should be addressed, and I think you're spot on about that.
I think I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question on that. One thing that we often run into in our advocacy work is that libraries are traditionally the responsibility of one ministry or one department, yet the benefits that libraries bring fall under the responsibility of lots of different departments. Yeah. And so, for example, libraries as social care centre, effectively, part of the social service infrastructure, it's not the Ministry of Social Services that's actually supporting libraries to do this. All the money is coming out of the Culture Ministry or the Education Ministry. Do you have any thoughts about how do we actually make non-core, non-traditional ministries for libraries or departments or funding streams understand this value?
I think that's it's very important to. It's actually I'm politicians and I know that it's not about to let some library to survive, but it's about what we are actually delivering for the society. Which role we are playing in certain agenda, and that should be much more clear to the society, to the politicians, and that's why I want IFLA also to open up for politicians and decision makers, so they can understand more what the library is about today and which role the new role libraries have today. And I believe also that will be also very interesting to work with partnerships. For instance, with the schools as library, with social health, because there's also a lot about work to do also for as mental health and other that the library is actually delivering. With also the business sectors about how you solve different things and how you make actually work for people. You can do it, you can facilitate a lot of activities which is actually make, and I know there's a lot of libraries doing like that, but I believe that partnership is nothing you can do enough of, because it's there you actually also make activities and you also make the awareness of what the library is actually doing.
When it comes to resources, this is a question, and also we're just being quite. I mean, I've been thinking about public libraries. I know people in this room are part of parliamentary libraries, which are more closed. They're not, trying to be public, but in terms of accessibility to information, I know there's a range of library individuals here. I think that when it comes to interaction and when it comes to relevance, especially with politicians, when you're describing the challenges that we're facing in society in terms of, let's say, data literacy, which is something I'm really passionate about how do we make sure people have the skills and are equipped to deal with the challenges ahead. And you talk to, whatever department it might be, and this is a problem that they're facing, the library's the solution. I keep, in my new role, people are saying, what's the pain you're trying to solve? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Well, actually, libraries can provide a really interesting way of trying to address some of the issues. Now, that isn't what you were right to say about why librarians were trained, because there's a training there in terms of the profession, and that's something I hugely respect, and we must make sure that librarians are supported and are trained, but we also must make sure the public spaces that we want to deliver some of these different agendas we've got people there also to help and assist and make sure that people have that support and resources. And then I go back to the question you just said about resources. So fundamentally, I think that libraries have public libraries in communities which are dealing and addressing with local concerns day in, day out, as well as making sure that we have some of the challenges that we're facing are being addressed. I just think libraries have such a future ahead if we are able to articulate it in a way and put the resources into it to make sure that happens. So it's about thinking cross-boundary. It's also about thinking, what you're talking about, these ministries, they have to think out the box too, and each place is dealing with it in a different way. But fundamentally, it's down to leadership. And that's something we haven't really spoken about. The people I meet in libraries that are addressing some of the key challenges, it's been an individual who's pushed an agenda, who's looked at the opportunity, and maybe is sharing the stories and examples of where that's been successfully and why it's happened, can help others when you're looking at these challenges and problems and thinking about how can we solve this and what can we do. So there's no magic wand to this. It's about how we can work together to make things better and think strategically forward about what that would look like. Sorry, it's a long answer.
No, but an incredibly helpful one. I can see someone else standing up. I can't see who it is because of the light. Yep, on the right, my right, your left.
Thank you. And thank you to the two speakers, inspiring speakers. My name is Stihler Andersen, and I'm chairman of the Danish Library Association. I would like to ask you, I don't see so many politicians here. And Rabih Azad-Ahmad mentioned that it's one of his goals that we should have more politicians coming here, because that's the only way to address and to show what the libraries really can do for society. And that's the goal, to show what libraries can do for society. So what kind of ideas do you think that could attract politicians to come more frequently to the IFLA conference, the annual conference? Because I think it's vital that we have more politicians coming here.
Actually, I think that's very relevant, I've actually for a time been communicating with IFLA about the idea of opening for the participants of decision makers and politicians, because I think I think we can inspire each other, and I think it will be in benefit of the both sides. As I mentioned in the beginning, I got inspiration to work, and so I get a lot of inspiration to work in the municipality, and actually something that has been implemented. And I'm sure many people get good relevance knowledge from how we are working in the libraries, which could also be adopted in many other places. So I believe that will be interesting. But I think it's also interesting that how to work with it, because the politicians also need the political debates. So it should be maybe another formal way, maybe to do it, where there is debate about the libraries. The library's role in the society. Take, for instance, about how democracy, for instance. It could be an agenda where IFLA could put it and invite politicians to address that, how we work with it, and what the role that libraries could actually work with that. For instance, digitalization, which is also an awareness in many societies, how we could do that, so that the political debates could also be actually interesting also to have it here. Not we are going to change the way IFLA is actually also to have that dialogue that IFLA is also interesting in.
Yeah. And so maybe, I think your next event is in Dublin, is that right?
Dublin, 15th to the 21st of August.
Right, so maybe a target then is to get 20 politicians from across the world together to talk about an agenda that's set by your committee that sets the agenda for these things, to talk about an area where you can then go off and deliver that for the next. And so you can see something that's happening throughout. What I would say to you is August is a difficult month for certainly European politicians, if I'm honest with you. It was only now that I'm out of the European Parliament that I could come to this, partly because it's the holiday time, but also because kids are going back to school at the end of August, and if you have a family, it's quite difficult, if I'm truthful with you. So I'm just delighted that I could come now. I'm out of politics to now for the first time be at one of your conferences. But it is if you can crack that, that's a very helpful thing. But you can also do things at a local level, but I'm saying at a very local level at your community, But let's look at, at Parliament level. You've got, every Parliament has a library. Make sure politicians are invited once a year to look at what's there, but also on a topic perhaps, or something of interest that will drive what your agenda is, but it's mutual to theirs. Then there's the issue about what I said. Each one of you is in your local communities. Each one of you has a local library. It is not rocket science to invite a local politician along to the library to look at something, maybe working with what you're doing with local kids, or maybe working with what you're doing in terms of a community initiative, so that they can see firsthand. I'd be very interested to see what the local engagement is, say, with the LA example I said to you that's going to be rolled out at the beginning of next year to look at air quality and sensors. And I think that would be a fascinating thing for local people to look at and integrate, involve their local representatives. But I don't know whether that's happening yet, but I think that would be a sensible thing to do. So there's lots of things that can be done, but I think setting yourself a target for next year to have maybe a dedicated legislator space, get 20 politicians together, but frankly those people are already converted to why libraries are important. We're not the people you need to convert. It's the people who we need to bring along on the journey. And I think that's something where if you can enthuse those who are already converted to go out and bring another 20 people along. So Dublin, first 20, next conference, another 20, so that you've got something you're working with, because you have got such amazing stories to tell. But if you don't go out and communicate them and tell them, how are we going to convert people to this cause? Because I do think it's a cause, the library movement. That's why I've been so passionate about it through my copyright work, and now I'm working with an Open Knowledge Foundation, partnering with libraries to see that open, fair future that we want to see, because we know that the world today is between an open world or a closed world, and libraries are about an open world, and we have to fight for that.
I think that's interesting to work with a specific target, maybe 20 or some. On Wednesday we have that in that session. I have actually a proposal where we are also going to hopefully discuss that, and I think it's IFLA could work with that. But the important thing is actually how to engage them, as they can feel their ownership also, as not also be invited, but also to be a part of that dialogue.
Thank you. I think we're nearly at time, so I don't know, do you have any final remarks?
Stephen, there are more questions.
But there's, I think we can run over, mainly because I'm also in charge of the next session, so I get to decide. This is power. This is great power. I will happily take more questions then.
Okay. I wanted just to find out, maybe from the panel, from a Namibian perspective, what advice would you give? Because we have a kind of a session where we are running like a librarian pick of the week. That is information that might be missed in a diary newspaper by either a staff or member of parliament. So what we do, we take a clip of it and share it by either on Parliament portal, the website, Facebook, and via emails to all staffs of parliament and MPs. But you find a situation whereby you get more emails questioning your integrity as, are you for or against us? So I wanted just to find out, if you encounter such a situation, what would you do?
Could you repeat the question?
The question is, we have I would say it's a program that we run, whereby you take a clip of the most like news making for the week. We call it the librarian pick of the week. And then we share this information on all the platforms that we do have for those that might have missed to acquire the dial paper, for them to pick up. But now you get information or emails reply back to ask you, are you against us or for? So that limits the movement of them coming to the library, because they see you as radical in their performance. Yes.
I think anything you can do to share information, best practice, in a way that is accessible and get people to be involved with that is really important. But I also think, you know, when I was saying about kind of continual dialogue, using technology to do, I manage a team remotely across 4 continents, In February, I had never used the tool Slack. Now I use it. I can't live without it. I use, a number of different ways of communicating with people in meetings that we do virtually all the time, and now it's just second nature. And I wondered why we can't do that more effectively in other ways. So I think in between, when you've got these meetings, you should be able to connect and maybe set a legislators, Google Hangout once a month where people from across your network can communicate, so they're preparing to come to Dublin. I don't know, I'm just giving you some thoughts, but I just think some of these things are really, are all doable.
And just following up on the question where the library was challenged, because the library was trying to encourage civic space, but as we know, information is political. And so whatever the library does, someone will criticize it and someone will see it as being one-sided for this side or the other side. How do you think libraries should react to that sort of challenge?
I think you're always going to have criticism no matter what you do, but I would certainly, if it's sharing information, putting things out there, you've got to do that because that is the right thing to do. And if you're not doing that, you're going to get criticised anyway for not doing it. So why not do it? Just follow your agenda. Put that information out there that's important for people and do not be fearful about it. Do it, as Nike would say. Sorry.
I think, yeah, and I agree. Whatever you can do, you could be criticized, but the libraries, the public libraries, has that very historical, neutral place where it's about actually to share knowledge. And I think that's very important that it keeps that neutral away, but that doesn't mean that the information or people's access to information has to be hard. If it's going to be like that it's not playing the role which is very important as a democracy house or democracy institutions. So I think that's very, very important to keep to insist that the information and the access to information is very important and it has to happen.
Thank you. And one last question.
Thank you. Just another angle to offer. Perhaps some librarians should think of becoming politicians. I can speak from experience on this. And I have colleagues in my country of Australia who are involved at the political level, perhaps not at national level, but at local level. And you may, as a public librarian, think it would compromise your situation. So if you think that is the case, find someone else who is a librarian, who is willing to stand politically to assist your cause. And I know in my own circumstance, it worked. Thank you.
Thank you. There's an action point for everyone.
Actually, if there is a librarian who wants to be politicians and add knowledge, important knowledge to the local governments, that will be excellent. I mean, the governments has to be representative also for the whole society, and of course that we just started to talk about why we are politicians, because we want to make some change. And I believe that the libraries is making huge change. And when you have knowledge and you know how to do that, why not add it into the governments? Maybe they will become more democratic in the future.
Thank you. Any last words, Catherine? And then we'll close. I'm getting signals from the technical.
I know there's signals there, I think. Thank you all for everything that you do, and thank you for sitting through our session, because it really means a lot to us, and anything we can do to help, we're there to help, even though I'm no longer a legislator.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And just say thank you, Catherine, thank you, Rabih, not only for being here, but for the work you do, that you've done, that you continue to do in order to support libraries and our values. Thank you.